Miami. I guess I should start with giving you a brief update on the distribution of the cash grant. The activity started in earnest, and the Ministry of Finance, which is tasked with its implementation, has rolled this program out across several regions. The target regions at this point in time are regions 1, 7, 8, and 9, the hinterland regions, and region 4. We will confine our activities to these 5 regions for the next month, and then move on to the other regions. So I just want to say to people from the other regions that you will be registered, but it will be after we've completed the registration exercise in these 4 regions. You will receive the cash grant. It's just a matter of time. And so please be patient, because it is a complex task involving the enumeration or the registration of several hundreds of thousands of Guyanese. Now, there have been some challenges given the magnitude of the task before us, and the Ministry of Finance has set up a mechanism to ensure that people can give a feedback as to the process, and hopefully they can improve the process of registration of people. Like in some centers, maybe if the enumerators go a little bit late, the lines gather up, people have to get to work, and in other places they've had some difficulties too. They're trying to smooth this out as quickly as possible, and we are keeping a watchful eye over this all. They have substantially completed the registration exercise in Region 9 and already started distributing checks there. They have substantially completed the exercise in Region 1 and Region 8. The schedule for Region 7 will be announced shortly, and the schedule for Region 4, East Coast, East Bank, and Georgetown are all out at this point in time. So we expect that this exercise will be completed in these 4 regions in the course of the next 4 weeks, and the checks for these 5 regions would all be cut, if not distributed immediately, but we're making a big effort to have them in people's hands too. I want to ask people to have some patience again with this exercise. We will not have to do this. We would not have to do this again in the future, when I'm sure in the future there will be additional cash grants. This is the registration exercise now that people are going through would allow us to have a proper database, so the next round it will be easier for that to happen whenever it comes in the future years. So please get registered and exercise a bit of patience. For all of those who've been trying to run down the exercise, and these are mainly people from the opposition. I see in Region 9, Carl Parker, the old APNU REO. He has something to say about the exercise, and you would see them. They stand out like a sore thumb. I would say that we'll just have to ignore them and persevere to ensure that people get their resources. And they're all very negative about this, the entire opposition, because they don't want it to succeed. They would like to see problems arising from the distribution, the registration and distribution exercise, so that they'd have something to talk about. They can't match the initiative, so they want to run it down. And we will not allow them to succeed. I've been also getting calls from individuals about the pension book distribution, and so there were some initial errors in the places where pensioners should collect their pension books from. I spoke with the minister, and these are being corrected so that the pensioners will be able to collect their books once the books are available, as I explained at an earlier press conference about how the security features we're putting into the new pension books. Once those are available, then they would be distributed in a manner that would be accommodative to the pensioners to see that they get the books as closest as possible to where they live. The ministry, as far as possible, is using like religious institutions, the churches, mosques, temples, places where people frequent, so that the pensioners can also receive their books in their communities. These were two things that have been raised with me during the course of the week. There have been some concerns, and people call me on this. For example, when the schedule came out earlier in the week and had on the East Coast, from Enterprise to King Grove, all the communities there being registered, but those from Enterprise to Commons Lodge on the East Coast, the schedule was not out. The pensioners and the people from Better Hope and Good Hope were inundating us with phone calls saying, where do we have to go to Enterprise to register? That has since been corrected, and the schedule for the entire Region 4 is out now. So people can see when they will be in your community. So please pay attention to the schedule. I know people are concerned about their ability to get registered, so I want them to understand that the government is taking their concerns seriously, but it is a huge undertaking. It's a large number of people, and it will take time. So for example, if you're in Region 1 or Region 9 and you did not have an opportunity to be registered when the team was there, would you still be able to get your money? The answer is yes. That's why I said substantially completed. So if we've completed, say, 95 or 96% of the persons in a region that are registered, and we get the checks in their hands, then the 5% remaining, 4 or 5% remaining, we can, at a later point in time, set up a mechanism for people to be registered, and they too will receive their checks. So I want people to understand, even if they miss the registration exercise that's taking place within a defined time period in their communities, they're not going to miss out on the resources. This happened the first time we did the household cash grant a bit, that some households missed out on it because they were not there to collect the money at the time when people were distributing it. The first 25,000, that was in the period when we had COVID. So I want to assure those individuals too that they will not be able. Let me say again, for people who are overseas, they're asking me if they can go to the consulate to register, and the answer is no. That whether we'll be having a desk in Queens and Brooklyn and Toronto to get them registered, and the answer is no. We made it clear that if you have to register in Guyana and collect your check in Guyana. We're not, whilst we're people living abroad, Guyanese living abroad are eligible, we are not going to be conducting registration exercises abroad. That they have to be done right here in Guyana. And they have to present themselves physically to do that. They can't come with authorization to give someone else to collect the money on their behalf. So that was the compromise variant, because there were concerns that the system could be abused. And we decided that to ensure that people are eligible, but they would have to do so, they'd have to come home physically and get the resources done. That could change in future years, but as of this moment in time, that's the position. So for those who've been calling me and sending a lot of WhatsApp messages to me, that's the position at this point in time. You'd recall the opposition was saying nobody living abroad should be eligible. We said, fine, you're eligible, but you have to come home and get this done. Now this week I want to be a bit more political than usual, because I think it warrants it. We've had quite a week of audacious demonization of GECOM, all with the intent to destroy the credibility of GECOM in a very unfair manner, patently unfair manner, by a number of fringe organizations. These organizations that exist on paper, that don't have membership. If you add all of their membership up together, they can fill a room. But they're boldly making statements and putting out press releases and getting a lot of these press releases represented in the newspapers and in mainstream media. And I think the primary target of the abuse, I would almost call it abuse, is the chair of GECOM. They're hoping to destroy her credibility. Now, had the chair of GECOM not stood up in 2020, APNU would have succeeded in stealing the elections. And I think they are bitter about that, because several times they were urging the chair of GECOM to break the law, to go against the Constitution of Guyana, to ignore decisions of the court, including the highest court, the CCJ. And she stood on the side of law and order and on the side of the popular, the electorate of the country. GECOM, with a massive attempt by the staff of GECOM, led by Lowenfield and others, when they tried to steal elections from within in favor of APNU, it was the commission, particularly the chair of the commission and others, who stood up against that attempt to steal the elections. So if there is anyone who is credible, or any any organization or leadership that is credible. It is the commission, not the secretariat. And that is why, to ensure to restore credibility to that the secretariat, some of the people had to be replaced by professionals. And that is what has happened here. But APNU is smarting from, they're very upset because the internal riggers, the people who rigged on their behalf, were removed from the secretariat, from the staff, and they don't have a compliant chairperson like they were hoping to have under Patterson when he was illegally appointed here. So that is what is playing out at this point in time in GECOM. And you have the TUC and all of the others weighing in on this process. But I'll come to that a little bit later. So I want to deal with that GECOM matter extensively. And then I want to address some other issues about double standards. So let me use the most recent example of this. The Press Association of Guyana has always spoken, or in its occasional public commentary, have always unfairly targeted the government or the PPP as trying to bully reporters when you have, and they even magnify innocuous situations into their perceived attempts at bullying reporters. This never happens. They ignore the opposition overt bullying of reporters, and criticize the PPP for perceived bullying of reporters. They complain that the government doesn't give enough access to media. They complain that we don't answer questions from the media, all unfairly. So last week, not last week, I think it might have been earlier, yes, it might be last week, from my last press conference, I was struck by an incident that took place. So the AFC, which is now a party very small in numbers, but it's not a new party. It's been around for a long time, 15 odd years. And it represents that it is open, transparent, it has cutting-edge policies, it's competent, it's not corrupt, all of which are false, and that it's open to the media. Has over the past several weeks now been conducting their press conferences on Zoom, so they control who can get into the Zoom links, and they can cut you off if they're not very happy with what you're saying. So at last week's press conference, one of the reporters, I'm not sure which reporter, was trying to ask the AFC about their position when in 2020, which was made public by Patterson that Mingo's figures match the SOPs that they had. That was last week. So the reporter was trying to ask this question. In 2020, you said Mingo's figures match your SOPs. Patterson said that. And you said you may be able, would be willing to make available the SOPs. So one would wonder now, why didn't you make those SOPs available? We know that was a blatant lie because Mingo figures did not match any SOPs. So Patterson lied to the nation. It was he was central to the narrative that was attempting to rig the elections. They were central to this. So AFC did not have a peripheral role. You don't need Nigel Hughes to study. He said they want to study whether the AFC had a role in attempting to rig the last elections. Here you have evidence of it in the presence of the person